Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Late Shot Podcast presented by Futures Fins. I've been riding Futures for 15 years, and when you need to trust fins like we did this year at Mavericks, trust me, Futures is the way to go. So please support them because they support us. And today on the podcast, we have none other than the Mavericks mathematician, I call him, Grant Washburn. Washy is an amazing character. I had a great time picking his brain about everything to do with Mavericks, swell directions, periods. You know, if anyone knows anything about Mavericks, it's Washy. He's a great guy. He's a mentor to a lot of the young kids coming up and just a great all-round guy. So I hope you enjoy the podcast.
I just thought, oh man, I literally just almost died.
This day just had that feel like every wave coming in was the wave of the day.
There was like a glass ceiling that was just shattered, and the next thing you know, it was like 10 levels up. Like, this is the experience I've been waiting my whole life for.
First off, Grant, thanks for jumping on, mate, and I really appreciate it. And
Sure.
we'll get to the Mav stuff a little bit later, but I think a lot of people have surfed Mavericks or know big waves, know Grant Washburn from obviously the surfing and the movies and stuff like that. But I'd like to go back in time to growing up, Grant as a kid. I know you came from the Northeast, right? Am I guessing Connecticut? Was that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good trivia
so
there. Good piece.
Yeah, good piece. Yeah. So take me back to growing up. But what was you're a massive guy. I'm guessing that surfing wasn't the first sport over there. It's probably more like football or something.
Yeah, I was a skinny kid actually right through college. I played basketball and I was a rail. And I always surfed, but I wasn't that good a surfer. And it was like summers only, East Coast summer, and bitter cold, and probably the waves are better in the fall and the winter. But I was never around for it. I was like a kid. I just loved it. No one I knew surfed. No one led me into it. I don't remember not being a surfer. That was all I liked to do when I was on the beach, and drew pictures of it all year until I could get back there. So by the time I was 16, I couldn't wait to just drive anytime I could, go to the coast. And East Coast is pretty cool off season because those places are really quiet. In the summer, it's like 4th of July or, is like Jersey Shore show at almost anywhere from Massachusetts all the way down to Florida. But then, particularly in the Northeast, it's just quiet. It looks like Oregon or something. It's empty. The big coastline, there's houses, but there's nobody in them.
Yeah.
And it's a fun place to be a surfer at that time. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing my American geography is not great. I'm guessing there's no waves in Connecticut, right? It's not on the coast.
It's pretty blocked. Yeah. You're talking New Jersey, Rhode Island, Long Island. Yeah. I had to go about 2 to 3 hours to get to any waves. But my family had a house in the shore in New Jersey, which is real common there. Is that everyone in the winter, it was really bitter. Most of these places are 300-400 years old, like the cities, obviously. And so everyone would try to escape, and the heat of the summer is like Amazon heat. The humidity, huge fluctuation compared to San Francisco or a lot of places where it's 30-degree air, 35-degree water, then 75-degree water and 80-90% humidity, 100 degrees in the summer. So everyone's out there. I learned to surf in New Jersey, same place my mom and my grandparents would go to the shore when they were little kids. And we all went to the same little sand spit, and great place to be a little kid.
Yeah, so obviously your parents, it seemed like they were into the ocean. They would you do your summer trips, summer holidays, road tripping, and spend the summers down there. So did you have any brothers and sisters? Did they surf as well, or?
No, I have a younger sister. All my cousins, we shared the house with my aunt's family, and so it was all like 5 girls and me. And none of them surf. We boogie boarded and stuff that everyone did, ride inner tubes back in the old days, and mats. But my dad actually was from Ohio, and he didn't like the beach at all. He basically inherited this obligation for the family to take over this house that he's just like, he'd rather be golfing. He still doesn't like it, but he's got an office out there. We still have the same house. I'm going back in July. Wow. But yeah, nobody lured me into it. It's one of those things. I say, it was like born to do this. I was fixated on surfing and big surf, even though I'd never seen any and didn't know. Even as a little kid, I didn't pay attention to contests. I loved the scale of a guy dropping off a huge wave, and I used to draw a Snoopy on my book, and see how small could I make them, so that was my obsession.
So how does that happen? I'm always wondering. I mean, I same thing for me. Like I grew up on a coastal town, so, and I had waves and surf, and so everything was in front of me. But when you're talking, big surf, like big surf from wherever you come is big. It gets to a certain level, and that's as big as it gets, right? So, for me, like, what made you infatuated by big waves? Was it seeing like something like the Eddie Aikau? Was it seeing Hawaii? Was it because what time of like your age group were you when you were traveling there to the summer and doing those trips? Was it 5, 6, 7 years old?
Yeah, and I could date myself with Brock. I was a little bit older than Brock, but like within months. So in the Eddie, when he was whatever 17, 18, I remember thinking he's my age, but not that I could ever do anything like that. I barely ever surfed as a kid, only a couple of months, and I pretty much sucked at it. I just loved it. So I always was obsessed to just go do it, and I never thought I would actually do it for any purpose other than as a hobby. But I was interested in capturing it and documenting it. At some point when I moved to San Francisco, which was later, I was like, oh, I should try to make surf movies because that's a way to be around it. But when I was really young, there was no Eddie yet. And I don't remember having seen any big waves. It's just, when I saw the magazines, tricks didn't fascinate me. And the waves that I would see around New Jersey didn't fascinate me. But when I saw those like big pictures of sunset in Waimea, those are all like still in my books. Like I kept them, I threw away all the whole magazine, but cut out like 3 pictures each month. And those are like stapled to the wall in the old house. And
you didn't think you would ever surf them? It was more like a figment of your imagination, right?
Yeah, no, specifically in college. I went to college in Hartford, a place called Trinity. And randomly, the only other surfer in this college happened to be my roommate. We think they saw like hobby and put us together. And I had a magazine. I was holding it up. And I remember saying to him, do you think I can ride one of these waves? And he was like, you're drunk, whatever. No chance, buddy. Like, get over yourself. You have no clue. And I was like, I had a desire. I really didn't think it was anything. The reason I moved to California was to surf, and I just wanted to find better waves, but I had no plan. And I never thought there was no Mavericks at that time. I didn't even know San Francisco had waves. I was like, California's better than New Jersey.
So what did it, what was your level like? Like obviously, majority of surfers do it for fun. They're recreational, but, like going through high school and stuff, you're probably, like you said, you're playing football, you're playing baseball, surfing's, fun for summer. But I mean, was there any sort of point where you're just like going, I'm getting better at this, or is just like a consistent, just like, I'm just a surfer from Connecticut and that's all I'm going to be?
Yeah, no, it was definitely, there's 2 times that it happened when, like the hurricane came when I was a little kid and the big kids made it out past the break. And that was one time when I saw Hawaii size waves. And I was one of the little kids, like a 12-year-old that made it out to where the 15-year-olds were. And that was something, And then when I was in college, we went to Rhode Island for a big hurricane. So there's 2 big hurricanes in one year in 86 or 80, maybe 87, 88. Anyway, big giant waves, like 15-foot face, 20-foot face waves at Point Judith, which was pretty unusual. And I surfed it for 2 days in a row. I had a friend at URI, and I caught a bunch of waves, and nobody would go near the big part of the wave, and I just didn't understand it. I was like, what? Everybody's surfing the corner and riding, the long point wave. But there was like big A-frames, and I, of course, got murdered and pushed in one time and spent half my time paddling, but I still didn't understand why nobody would go out there. And I think that's who, somebody was taking pictures, and they said, who are you? I was like, what?
Yeah.
You got a couple of big ones. So that's the only 2 times that I ever thought, oh, wait, I'm different than these other people. Yeah. I moved to San Francisco, and then I still was pretty much a shitty surfer. I still am, but I loved big waves. And at Ocean Beach, that thing is repeated every swell. Like, who makes it out? Who could even be out there? Yeah. Who is that person? Oh, I know him. It's the same 3 of us,
Yeah, I've always wondered, because you have like people that are, super talented, like great surfers, but they'll never want to, go and push themselves in big waves, which is fine. And then you have guys like yourself potentially that, like that's something in you that's not, you can't train that. There's just a desire or a will or something that switches in your mind that's able to go, well, you know what, I might have the most talent, but I want to do that. And it's something that's, it's funny. You can always try and get better at surfing, but that switch that needs to be flicked to maybe go out and put yourself in danger, that's something that's just that's born in you. It's natural. It's in you. It's not really something I mean, you can get better at it, but you might inch your way into bigger surf, but you're not going to paddle out to the pit at Mavericks and put yourself in the bowl. Like if you're a great surfer, but you're scared shitless. Whereas we see plenty of times where guys with not much ability are willing to go out and put themselves, are willing to put themselves in the bowl.
Plenty of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. And you can have too much of either. It's a balance that makes a good big wave surfer. If you're too, reckless or unafraid, you will get punished and you're not going to do well no matter how you slice it. But I definitely was in shape. I showed up out here physically fit, and as an athlete or whatever, I wasn't a crazy, like I had friends that would jump off higher off the cliff, and I had more endurance friends, but I definitely had a kind of obsessive commitment type of thing. So if we were playing something that, where everyone would finally be like, all right, whatever, you win, it was like King of the Pool toy or whatever. I'm like, all right, I'll play until the end. But so that's a thing that for sure, and I saw that coming out. I knew I wasn't a very good surfer. I assumed pretty much everyone's better than me, which is true. But the more times you're out there, you get more comfortable. You could see where the waves are. A much better surfer comes, they can't orient in the surf like you at Mavericks. It's real about location and all that. So you get better quick. And then filming it, that was the difference for me was I filmed it all winter and then watched myself miss a bunch of waves and go, what's that guy? Why isn't he paddling? Like, oh, that was me. Yeah. So you learn, and then you're better at it.
I think that's a great point you made, because and we'll touch on this later in the podcast, but you have made a name for yourself for just being the guy that knows every swell direction, every tide, every nook and cranny. And, we still to this day, like I sit in the lineup with you, talk story, and we talk story about what it's doing, the ocean's doing now, what it's going to do tomorrow. And I see you mentor a lot of people coming through. And so that was something you were able to do and go, hey, well, I'm going to make up for, maybe a lack of ability or talent or just, not growing up in Australia or Hawaii. And this is the way I'm going to get better and get waves and outposition people, So that's amazing you said that, because that's exactly the path that you've taken, with, filming and just being able to know everything about Mavericks.
It's just as much fun for me, at some point, you're a crazy endurance person who lasts longer than most people, but you only have so many attempts or time on the water on any given day. And then when you get those 2-3 swells in a row, you're going to run out of ammunition unless you're like superhero. So, and as I always knew I had limits to it, I never put pressure on myself to win something, but it was so fun to share with Greg Long and Twiggy and Kai and you. And, it's like, oh man, you're like this, do that, go over there and don't worry. It's okay to not run away those first big sets until you sit there for a while. You can't be comfortable that it's okay to wait for them and not move away from it. But we learned that pretty early, and those days are so rare, every 5 years or 10 years. So that what happened this January, I still we're still trying to learn. I'm like, okay, in 25 or 30 years, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to get us. But right now, I'm not sure. That's rare. It was awesome. I felt like a little kid again. Exactly.
Yeah. So when did you get through high school and then you move? Is your decision to go to college? You went to would you go to you moved to the West Coast? Right?
Yeah, it's a small college. I was playing basketball and they were like, oh, I got recruited a little bit, but I had gone to a camp when I was younger. This maybe goes back to the surfing thing too. As an athlete, I knew where I fit into the top echelon of Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey basketball. And it was like, okay, you want to be the manager? I mean, the kids at the 16 and under, AAU tournament in Philadelphia were NBA level, and I knew I wasn't one of them. So when I got to go pick a college, I was like, okay, you can work your butt off and play some as a junior, or you could go to this college and, it's not a big deal. You don't live with the team. And nobody thinks they're going to the NBA because none of you are. Welcome to the world. You can practice all you want, but you don't have it. And, it was cool. I had fun. And I got lucky in that randomly had a friend that was moving to San Francisco at the end of college. He said, oh, I should come out And I thought, I can't do that. My parents will kill me. But later on, a family friend said, oh, you should go. And it was all about the surf. I didn't know what I was doing, but I put a backpack and a bag and one surfboard. It's the only board I had, 6'10" or something. Big board.
So
that
yeah,
was
that was 1991, right? If I read correctly.
1990, yeah.
1990,
1990, yeah.
And then
nobody knew of it. Mavericks wasn't a thing. I just moved to Ocean Beach and had no idea. And then the waves got bigger and bigger, and I was like, whoa, this looks like Hawaii.
So how was that progression? Like you've got a little bit of surf. You finally get to a place you're like, oh wow, like now here's Ocean Beach, a wave that actually does have a lot of power, is giant, and you do have the desire. How do you start to work yourself? Do you just dive straight into the deep end of Ocean Beach? Do you meet some people that just like, sort of take you under their wing a little bit, or is it just like, I'm just diving in?
I didn't know any better, but I just dove in because that's where I lived. And I just really had no understanding of what we were talking about. Like interval, all that stuff was beyond me. We didn't have period in the East Coast and that I knew of. But the waves got bigger, and there's so few people that are doing it. And it was like a perfect storm of, I was just super fit, 20, whatever, one athlete, ready to go. And I could surf it every morning, and I got a night job. So I was just like on it all the time. I was super fit. By the time the big waves came, I had been there for like 4 months, and I would be the one that could make it out. Like I had figured out how to just persevere. And once you were out there, it's not so bad. It's like getting out there. And then learned about getting pounded. And then I met Doc and a couple of the other guys, John Raymond. And yeah, they mentored me a bit. I mean, they were like, okay, that board's not going to work. You need this. But that was like magic carpet to understand it. Huge amount of potential, and like this wild field of empty giant waves. That was like the whole coastline on those days. There's nobody surfing it.
Yeah. And then when did, cause I'd have to, if I think about you, Washi, I got to think that there's probably a point where you became obsessed with, learning about the weather, swells, periods, you're a smart guy, and then all of a sudden, you also, you talked about your filming of the waves and all that sort of stuff. So how long after you moved to San Fran do you start to, go, you know what, I'm going to start to dive into not just paddling out there, but actually understanding it, start to, is there a Surfline out there? Is there whatever is out there is out there? Like how does it get to the point where you get the fax machine, you call the Weather Channel, like yeah.
Well, I tied into Doc Renneker was the experienced guy in my neighborhood, and then met some of the guys in Santa Cruz shortly after that. But there was the fax, that was it, the weather fax. We had surf magazines, all that stuff come out late. So to get a forecast was a rare thing. And, I was going to make a film career. I was doing rap videos and stuff, and I was like, I should make a surf video. And I was going to I'd been renting cameras or borrowing the cameras after I was usually doing lighting. I worked at an editing place, and I was filming waves at Ocean Beach thinking this is like going to be the biggest waves because I could see them breaking out there. And on the big days, and I had asked, the couple of people that had been around, like, how tall are those waves? And they were like, it's 10 times overhead. Yeah. So 10, there's no such thing as that. Like in Ocean, whatever, at Waimea, the biggest wave at that time was like 50 feet, like really, if you put a ruler on that stuff, 50 or 60 feet. So for someone to say 60, 70 feet, I was like, ooh, I'm going to film it, I'll make a movie. And so I was already doing that. And then the first session at Maverick, so the first time I saw a picture of Mavericks, I was like, oh, I'll just throw the other projects away because it was just unbelievably more intense than anything I'd been near, even after a whole winter at Ocean Beach. That the next winter is when I went to Mavericks.
So talk us through that. How does Grant Washburn hear about Mavericks? And so take us through, how you started to hear about it, and then I'm not sure if the first time you saw it was the first time you surfed it, or you went and checked it, like just to see if it was real, this mythical creature.
Yeah, I just went out. No, but the first I heard of it is like those movies where it was like there's a story and a rumor, and I had like been around enough to sort of not believe any of them, because every time I went anywhere, the waves were smaller than in front of my house. So it would be like, oh, go to this place, go to that place, over here, over there. Every time we drove around, the waves were smaller. There was more people. Like Santa Cruz is crowded, and like no way I'm going to go down there when I have
because Ocean Beach is sort of the biggest spot around there. If you take away Mavericks, right, and it's like it's right there. You're seeing it every day, and you're like, well, like what's the point? Everywhere is smaller.
Cool. Why would I go anywhere? You guys just don't want to paddle out. That's the deal. Everybody doesn't want it. They want a channel, so there's no channel. Tough. But yeah, I had heard about it, and my roommate was a photographer. This was my friend from college that actually moved out here with me, and he didn't surf big waves at all, really. But he had a really long lens, and he took a picture on the way back from Santa Cruz at Mavericks when Jeff was out by himself, and I was surfing the same exact swell right at the moment of he took this photo, and I was figuring I got the biggest waves, like I got such big waves, and I was so proud, and he goes, no man, these are nothing. And I was like, what? I was kind of pissed, and we had to wait a week or whatever to get the slides back, and when the first picture came up, it was just him paddling over one, and I was like, whoa, like, we still have it. It was like, can't believe it was twice as big as all the waves at Ocean Beach, which are twice as big pretty much as every other spot. So this is like 4 times the size of Santa Cruz on the same day as Santa Cruz. So as a guy who doesn't understand what's going on, how can it be? Yeah. And like you would know from Hawaii, like how can I go from where they got the tacos and it's flat to around the corner and there's 40-foot waves? Like, how's that work? So in Mavericks, it's not obvious that it's like a cove or that there's a reason for it to be that big. So that's where the weather starts coming in, trying to figure it out. Like, wait, it's a lot bigger than we thought. Why?
Yeah. And it's funny because I remember seeing that. I think it was Surfing or Surfer, and where the headline, I'm not sure if it was the headline, but it was like, West Coast is like Hawaii, or there is a Waimea on the West Coast. There was this big hoopla about like, wow, like there's a legitimate Waimea in California.
Yeah. No, there was definitely, it was weird because Evan had come up. Evan was kind of like a liaison to the industry in the South, and like not being from here, I just was out of it. I didn't understand it, but there was a north-south thing. And the guys up here had whiteboards and no stickers and black wetsuits, and they didn't like the colored, bright colored wetsuit and stickers of the kids from South. And no one would say that there was a 20-foot wave in California. It was sort of like, you can't go to Hawaii if you say that. Like if you start talking that way. So there was like this taboo that Mavericks couldn't be 20 feet Hawaiian, which I didn't know any better anyway. So I was like, okay, well, that's what they say. I believe them. And then Richard Schmidt came, and Evan, and then eventually Ken Bradshaw. They were like, "Ooh," the first set that came by, they're like, wow, that's big. And we're like, oh, no. This is just a normal day. And they're like, what? Like, yeah. And then we showed the picture of the inside bowl, and Bradshaw in particular had this photo of the inside bowl, and he wouldn't believe that it was the inside bowl. He goes, no, that's the main peak. And I said, no, it's not, man. We rode that from 200 yards out to that. And he's like, no, let me see that picture. And we showed him the sequence with the foam, like, see how the foam's going up. And he's like, can I keep these? They were just blown away. So then we were like, oh, okay. Because Jeff had been to Hawaii, but he didn't want to pick fights everybody. And Richard Smith caught a couple bombs, and they took pictures of it, and that was it. Then everyone goes, okay, yeah. No more big fish stories, because look at those fish.
Yeah. So what was it like the first time you took the walk out?
They brought me up there. It's funny. I put the board at the OPL as a 9.0 that Bradshaw had made for me. It was the first board anybody ever made me, and I was so afraid. It was my only board. I was so afraid it would break. And at Ocean Beach, if it breaks, you can glue it back, and like you could still get through the season, sort of. And at that time, that was catastrophic. There were no boards anywhere. Like if you broke your big wave board, that's it. You might as well not have a car. So I was afraid of breaking it there. And my other friend who had got one, John Raymond, who he got one at the same time as me. First session at Mavericks, missed a wave or whatever, got caught inside into the rocks, and the pieces of this thing were just devastating for me. It's just, look at this, it's like your pride and joy, and it looked like it's been beaten by sledgehammers and broken by a forklift. And I was like, there's no way to fix that. And they said, you got to come to Mavericks. Like, I don't have to come, man. I only have one board. But they forced me, or Doc, was like, you got to come. You have to come. And I didn't look at it. And I just went out there. And I was so that first paddling around, the first time I saw one hit the middle, So you're not even, it's still, you see where the guys are trying to catch them and you're like, whoa, look how big it looks out there. And then in front of you comes a wave that's bigger than any wave that you thought was on the outside. It was like, it's 40 feet in here and someone's like trying to get to it, that's like pumping and not making it, Sean Rhodes or somebody. I'm like, oh my God, like, holy shit. I don't know if I wanted to ride him. I knew like, I have to watch this. I stayed out there till the end. I caught a few waves. I don't remember that they mattered because I saw Richard's wave. Like he got a big barrel. He pulled into it, kind of like what the guys did this year, like Pete's wave. He pulled into one of those things and it just smoked him. And it was right there. I'm like, what? Like never seen any picture like that in my whole life of every magazine I ever looked at. And I was the last guy in the parking lot and Jeff was talking to Sean Rhodes and I was looking at their stuff and like the strings were so thick and the leashes, everything I had was like toy. Yeah. And there was Sunset Beach stuff. It was from Hawaii, made for Sunset Beach, and it was nowhere near. And Jeff had like taken floorboards and epoxy and like made a rail like put his leash back on. He like buckled the nose and glued it in at lunch and paddled back out. I was like, this is so heavy, man. I love this. Like, there's no finesse here. There's no like, oh, is my sticker crooked? It's like, if you can get out there on anything and get in front of one of those things and get one, that's it. That's all the whole game. So that's what I was committed from that moment on, not to riding it, just to like being on it.
Being a part of it.
That was it. Yeah. And I never thought, even at that time, that I would be catching any of the big ones. I thought I could be here. And like, for sure, I realized I knew already that no one can keep track of a big swell. Like by the third or fourth day, no one remembers which day they caught the wave or when the wipeout was. Like, so I had journals from the very get-go because it was so special to me, even Ocean Beach. So when I started going to Mavericks, of course, I kept track of that. And every single day anyone surfed it, I got it written.
Wow. And what year was that? Was that like a year after you guys moved there?
No,
like
91.
91
yeah,
was the first.
The fall of 91 and 92. So 92 was the big Richard Schmidt's big wave, the January. And then I was on every swell from that. We didn't really understand it, though. We didn't understand, the nuances of when it might be good where you wouldn't have thought it was going to be good. But I knew, if the patch is breaking out in front, you would go. And it does break until May sometimes and maybe even June. Not this year, but.
Yeah.
So, I was on it from then on. And nobody, it was a couple of years before more people, 93, 94.
Yeah, what was it like? Let's go. I'd love to go through the 90s, right? Because what was it? I mean, because at the moment, it's so crazy when you see the people out there in the swell. But what was it like in the 90s? Like how many people would be there generally, like, on a good swell? Did it fluctuate? And then, did it slowly sort of taper up? Like I'm sure that probably the next big influx was probably all the Santa Cruz crew, right? When they started to surf.
Yeah, well, they were there first. I mean, Richard and Vince Collier and I think Pete and mine session might have been the first, but like together. But some of those older, the first guys to surf with Jeff are guys from Santa Cruz, and the first, most of the more accomplished surfers, other than Sean Rhodes and Ambrose, were all from down there. And when we would go out, most of the days nobody went too close to it except for Jeff, or maybe Vince if he came. And so there would be, like there is now, like that spread, there are people that are really looking to get in trouble and people that are kind of watch on the side, and we all try to figure out where we fit into that, given how we feel that day and what's going on. Yeah. So it was always everybody on the sidelines, and there's waves over there, and that's every session, and it was rare that people were going and pushing it and trying to get them. And if you're filming, it's so frustrating because they don't look like waves unless someone gets on it. Like someone has to go catch one over there, and if they catch it in the front and foreground, that makes the background look smaller, no matter how, unless you're shooting from the cliff. So it was really hard to get good shots of anybody unless, Pete and Flea came and they got in their little jostling match, and it was really clear it would come all at once, big crowd, and then they'd all leave, and there would be 3 people on the shoulder the rest of the weekend, and when the crew came and the light was on, I'd grab camera and watch and hang out, and then when they were gone, I was like, okay, now I'm going to catch some leftovers, and do whatever. But I did incrementally work up till I was like so frustrated. Like, nobody's going to catch one. Fine, I'll go catch one and go get a couple. And then those guys would start getting them. Then go grab a camera and go back, film it.
What was it like? It seemed like obviously Pete and Flea had a real, there was a real sort of competition between those two guys trying to push themselves deeper. I was looking through some old footage, some of Powerlines and Kurt's old footage the other day, and they were just going trading back and forth, like just, I mean, sending it as hard, if not harder than the kids today, you know, like when you look at,
with a lot less stuff,
man. And you really take a step back and look at it and go, man, it's super impressive. Like what all you guys did back then, you know, just, yeah, it blows my mind. I always wonder, I go, would I be doing that now? You know, would everyone here be doing what they're doing back? You probably
You
would,
would
you know. Well, I mean, luckily, I was luckily I started without, you know, flotation. And I mean, you know, one of the first times I was surfing Mavericks, it was just a wetsuit and your board as well. You know, I'm glad to have got that instead of just being, you know, born into the flotation and pool vest, you know, generation. But it is what it is. You know, it's things move forward and progress. But what was it like watching Pete and Flea? I mean, it must have been quite the show to see those two guys push it, and then other people just sort of try and get in there as well and get their waves.
Yeah, no, and I mean, also Jay, right off the get-go. And so, you know, Pete was the established guy, kind of a pro surfer, if there at that time, you know, crossover, Sunset Beach, big wave guy, spent a lot of time in Hawaii. Flea was the counterculture hero, and like I think nobody knew of him at first, at least, you know, and he kind of made his name at Mavericks, whereas Pete sort of had been a competitor. But Jay sort of showed up out of the blue with like a neither nor. Like he was an East Side, West Side, Santa Cruz guy, longboard, like, and he was a kid, and he just was so friendly. But man, he charged like he just couldn't keep himself out of there. So that desire to like go get the waves was so pure in him that it was, at first a lot of people were like, God, the kid's pissing me off, or nobody liked him. But then it's like, he's so nice. Like you thought he was full of shit, or that he was so, you know, pretending to be nice. So those guys all pushed each other. We all, you know, everybody upped it. But when Pete and Flea, it changed after Mark Food drowned. A lot of people were like super excited, including a lot of really good surfers that were like, whoa, you know, if that guy could drown, I'm not doing that anymore. So the crowd backed off, and the crowd that was still out there was extra cautious after that, because everybody, that was a, you know, face the music kind of thing for people that maybe had been not recognizing this was as dangerous as it is. And then Pete and Flea's rivalry went right on through from there, you know, before that happened, and then, you know, 96, 97 up into that El Nino. And on those days, nobody else was really pushing it. Nobody else was really able to push it much. And like Ross Clark and Tony Ray came, and they were like, whoa, you know, like the best guys in the world would come and go, wow, man, Pete, you know, and Flea, like nobody was, you know, Ross thought, oh man, why are you guys all on the shoulder? And then the first set comes by, and he's like, whoa, I'm not going over there, you know. And that's Ross Clark Jones. Talk about, you know, people that are willing to go for it. So they had each other, you know, to push each other, because either one of them alone wouldn't have done, probably, I think they would agree. And they lifted everybody else too.
Where do you think Jay? It's hard to say, but like, you know, in say where surfing is now with what you see at Mavericks, like, you know, if we could transplant Jay into the lineup, these past swells, like where would he fit in the group that's out there now?
You know what? It's so hard to understand. Somewhere between Kai and Twiggy, and you know, with some other level, you know, his experience would have been more than everyone. His ability to put that together was at least as good as anybody. He for sure had, I don't know if he had the physical chops, but he was definitely like committed to it. So as far as like, you know, a warrior went, there's nobody more. So yeah, he would have been right there. He for sure would have been backdooring the ball with everybody. And it would have been, I mean, he was such a neat guy. So I get inspiration from him. I had interviewed him about this, like, what do you think is going to happen in the future? And he just drew a total blank. And looking at it now, it was, you know, like spiritually weird. Like, I was like, come on, you know, he wanted so badly to answer for me. He was like, and he just couldn't see a future. And it was like, I wonder, you know, why? Like, why can't he just imagine what it would be like in 10 or 20 years? And he just couldn't. And then he died like a year later. So wow. I don't know. But riding bigger waves, he said, oh, maybe we can catch bigger waves. But I don't know. We catch pretty big waves now. Like, it's hard to imagine that people are going to do what they're doing. But I could see it now easily, as the equipment was just disastrously bad. You know, Pete had a couple good boards, but a lot of people still to this day, their boards don't turn and aren't able to really make use of all the speed. So there's potential. But Jay, was a top dog, and he would have been. I think he would have set the level for everybody. He was more intense than Pete. You know,
How old
committed.
would have Jay been now?
I think 40 something.
Oh,
He'd have been it would have been brutal, especially his start. Like Luca. I mean, if you start playing this game
Tassie as well.
Yeah, Tassie and Greg Long, you know, at 15, 16, they were like a 25-year-old as far as the amount of experience they had on them, and still with the young, you know. It's hard to find that, though, because I wasn't like that. I wouldn't have been a mature 16-year-old, so I'm lucky I wasn't around it until I was 21, you know. But that's it. It takes a special person to be that committed at that age. You know, Greg Long, you could pick him out right away, like, wow, Jay, you know, Kai Lenny, those are different people. They're not a normal kid.
Yeah, and you know, Jay, I know he trained a lot too. I know he loved his spearfishing and his free diving.
Yeah.
Mark Healy told me a crazy story about him and Jay at sunset. Like, you know, this kid had come over and was talking to Mark, and Mark's like, yeah, okay, kid, let's go. Now, you know, we'll go out to, I think it was out sunset, right on dark, basically dark, and takes him out, and Mark's like, I'll show this little kid, and he just sort of like, Mark just bailed in, come in and left him out there, and then you know, an hour later, Jay just cruises back into the shore with a bunch of fish or something, and like non perplexed, no fuss, no nothing. Like,
so
not
just so genuinely nice. He didn't know they were messing with him. He's like, oh, thanks for telling me a great spot at night.
Yeah,
like, what?
And I was like, oh, that's a really cool story. That's sort of, I guess, really, you know, I didn't get to know Jay, but you know, I feel like, you know, through the stories, you know, I'm close friends with Bob. I know Bob Pearson was close with Jay as well. So Bob's always telling stories. You know, I've done his paddleboard race, the Santa Cruz, the J race up there. So it's been cool to be a part of his spirit for sure, you know. But yeah, it's cool because I remember that Iron Cross drop, you know, that famous drop in the offshore wind, you know, at such a young age. And then you look at Tassie's, that wave when Tassie was 16, where Tassie took that real steep one and had to straighten out, got slammed, and you're like, wow, man, that's like, you know, what Luca's doing, you know, a few years ago. They're all around 16 years old, and yeah, man, when I was 16, that would blow my mind to think they'd be doing that at 16.
Well, especially I mean, you can't just go do it. You have to have your act together. You know, you have to have equipment, you have to have some training and ability, and be able to override your fear and all that other stuff. So it's not just like, oh, I'll jump off a high dive. You know, it takes, and the commitment. That's what Jay, he kept showing up. That's what you'd see, like Greg Long in the storm. Oh, it might be bad all weekend, but I'm here just in case it's not. And I'd see the footprints, like, who else is stupid and crazy enough to be checking it on this day? And like, oh, there's Jay. How are you, man? You know, it's the same people. So that commitment and yeah, you know, but that maturity ahead of their age, the clear goal, like that, the thing is, there's no doubt. And Mark Healy too, you know, a guy had no doubt that this is what he's interested in, you know. Yeah. We would see, and I'm sure you see sometimes out in the lineup, guys out there that are, whatever motive maybe led them to it, it's not in their core that they want to do this. And so they've kind of like, it's kind of uncomfortable for me. I walked on the beach one time with someone who was telling me the whole time how they don't like this, you know, big waves, this, and the swimming and all this stuff. I'm not like you guys. Like, wow, man, you're having so much fun. Maybe you shouldn't come out with us because your whole trip is like a bummer. Like, and John, you know, some of my other friends are really not very good surfers. No offense, but we just have so much fun. You know, they're not fear for their lives or feel any pressure. They just go and do it. And you know, Jay had that, and Kai has that, and you have that. Like, there's a bunch of people that have both, and they have such ability, but most of us only have a little bit, and you know, just make do.
Well, it's cool too. You know, you see Mark Sponsler still out there. You see Christie still out there, and they paddle out on the biggest days, man. They don't get a jet ski ride out. They're paddling out. They get there. They sit, you know, Christie's corner. Or they sit in the channel, and every now and then you see them get their wave, and they're stoked, man. They're so stoked, and I'm super stoked. I get stoked when I see them in the water, you know. I mean, there's certain people, you know, when I paddle out, when I see you, and there's certain people where I'm like, always, it makes me feel like, okay, I'm at Mavericks, you know what I mean? Like, this is where I'm meant to be, you know, and that gives me hope, you know, because I tell people, I go, you know, like, yeah, I love big waves, but I'm a fan of just the ocean and and when it gets like it did in December, or like it did in January, like even if I was injured, I probably would have flown over to be on the jet ski. You know, I've done that before. Yeah. I've been there. I knew I couldn't surf, but I wanted to be a part of it. And how could I help? Could I do jet ski rescue or assist someone and be on the boat, like help them out with their food or whatever? You know, I want to be a part of it because, you know, there's something about being in the ocean when it's very rare when it gets to that size or that energy and power that you only get a certain amount of times in our lifetime to see that. And for someone that loves the ocean, like I don't want to miss that, you know, and I'm probably going to take that with me, you know, well into my 50s and 60s, man, like where maybe I don't want to catch a wave at Mavericks, but I sure do want to be there and see what's going on from the channel.
That's it. I mean, and I definitely get the same thrill. And, you know, like this whole year was a real good transition for me. Just, I can feel my kids are older, I'm older, and like, I don't want to go, you know, lay it on the line 15 or 20 times on a big day. You know, I might get one if I really want to or feel good, but I had such a good time being out there and just cat and mousing it and lining it up and, you know, finding my spot and knowing that I don't, you know, I took my wipeouts on some of those smaller days. I'm like, my God, I cannot get beaten like this tomorrow. Like I just knew it. So I'm out there, and to be able to have the knowledge and experience and, you know, still some fitness to be able to do that and just play. Like I was like, okay, I don't really care if I do anything other than, you know, help everybody line up and jockey for a couple shoulders. And that's, I can come home from that and just be totally fulfilled. And like, it doesn't bother me at all to not have got the wave of the day. And I'm psyched that Kai had his magic session and Twiggy had his wipeout, and, you know, you guys all got a few, and that just to be part of it is every bit as thrilling as riding one. And, you know, if you're out there by yourself, that's another funny part. Like in the old days, you could be out there on a beautiful, perfect day and there's nobody, and you called all your friends and no one comes, and then you catch a couple really big bombs and it's fun and it's great, but it's more fun with some other people, you know, and it's lonely and scary and dangerous to be all out there solo. And there's a limit to how much that would be what you'd want to be doing. Like if it was just all by itself all the time and it was just a big empty wave with no people, would everybody really be wanting to go do that all alone? Like probably not. I mean, we're there for the group half the time. Yeah,
there's a fine line. I mean, I think this to me 2020, 2021, I mean, that the more so the January run, that 2 weeks where, I mean, let's just talk about, so the day the Pete's wave was 2 days before the massive day in January. Now that day was, I paddled out, I got it out there in the morning, and it was one of the best directions I've ever seen. It was glassy. It looked like a point break. There was multiple days that were like 5 or 6 people out, and it would be the best day of the year, any other day of the year, you know, like especially the last few years. And it was just, you know, number one, people are either burnt out, you know, they're saving themselves for the next day, they can't travel, their budget's blown already because there's already so many swells, and or people just don't want to do it anymore because they, you know, they've got their waves, you know. But to me, I look back and went, I tried to surf as much as I could those 2 weeks because I was like, this to me feels like I'm back in the 90s. Like I teleported myself back where I could go out and you know it's pumping and it's going to be pumping and there's a lot of people around, but you could go out for 3-4 hours. There was that morning before Pete got his barrel wave. There was me, Ryan Augenstein, like 4 or 5 people, like, and it was phenomenal. Like such not heavy, thick like Pete's wave, but it was just perfectly point break.
Pretty heavy though.
Glassy,
that's just
but
you're
heavy.
You're calloused.
Well, I think you're calloused, right? But then Pete, I paddled in. I'm like, well, I'm done. I'd got like 10 waves. I'd made my waves. I was gonna rest for the next what was coming, you know. And Pete had come out with John, and I said, "You're gonna go out?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go out and get one." I mean, 10 minutes later, he's into that thing, right? He's into that wave of the century, you know, and that wave looks completely different to when I was there because it was that swell was incoming. Twiggy had just paddled out from the left, and Pete got that thing, and you're looking at that mutated thing, going, "Oh my God! Like, where did that come from?" You know, and just the whole. I mean, you know, we've all seen it, but but that was a day that was very like power lines. It just came out like that wave nearly went undocumented. Like
Right.
it was pretty
No,
close.
I saw it too, like from paddling. It was too far away, and I was like, "What the heck?" I said, "Oh, those guys are towing in already. Like that's not cool." And then he paddled it, but he caught it from the other peak. Like clearly,
Yes.
I could see where he came from and how fast he was. That's why I thought it had to be a towing because it's pretty rare that someone's paddled in like that. But it is what we had talked about 20 years before, and he's like, I'm going to go get one of those. Like we already knew where that spot is. It's completely separate from it. And that he could figure out, which days they're there and when to go put some time in there and ride like 4 waves on 2 days. And they're all, 30-foot backdoor the bull. So that's 25 years of experience put into a couple of quick rides. But those are super special days. And we think, it would be once every 10 years that you'd see that. And here we saw it multiple times in 2 months. And, it'd probably be 10 or 20 years before that even comes close.
Yeah, it was funny because I did the podcast with Twig, Kai, and Pete after the December day, right? And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I said, wouldn't it be amazing to get another chance or another couple of chances of a day like that, and then, because you just, as big wave surfers, we get minimal chances at that, like 2010, the contest. Then there was the 2014 day, that sort of the Titans day that, sort of a bit uglier in the morning, but there was waves out the back, the second reef, and you sort of go, man, wouldn't it be great to get multiple chances? Like what would the level be? Like what would we probably do? And I think we were talking on the podcast saying, probably someone would try and backdoor the bowl. And we got that chance, not on the day that we thought, but on another day, and it happened. I mean, that wave, I tell people, that wave was a unicorn. I mean, for him to paddle out and just to pick that wave, the thing opened up, actually grew. Like we all know Mavericks pinches 99.9% of the time. For that thing to throw open and actually, keep open and spit him out, I mean, it's a unicorn. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care how good you are to pick that wave. And I just look at it and go, yep, that's Maverick saying, hey, Pete, here's your 30-year anniversary ring. Go take it.
He definitely I think he rolls dice there. But at the same time, I think he's one of the few people that could have discerned which one is the unicorn in the herd. Because they coming by, he picked that one. And it would have been like any other spot where there's a big section inside and you're backdooring a chunk of water. You look down the line to see, okay, I think this one's going to be one of those. And, when I'm out there, I'm thinking of one that doesn't have that because I want to backdoor the bull that's not going to smash me. And he chose the one that would with the line that he could make. And he knew that. He definitely did it toe surfing a bunch of times. And he's one of the only people that has, spent the time in doing both to be able to do that. There's probably very few people that will ever be that familiar with the area, and in that kind of situation, it'll be impossible really for someone else.
Yeah, I wonder, and I don't think this is a question that's been asked, but I wonder if all those tow sessions really helped him visualize, like where he wanted to be, and just because I've seen him, I think he had the cover of Surfing Mag where he was coming down and backdoored it as well, and I'd seen him do that a lot. So I wonder if the tow sessions had helped him, visualize and have a good look at what a wave would look like that could do it potentially paddling. And let's not mention pure talent that allowed him to make that wave. You ain't just every Joe Day surfer paddling into that thing and making that thing. Like that took every ounce of his talent to not poke and
his old bones.
Oh my God.
His wisdom. No, it's true though. I mean, he was always the best, one of the best surfers out there until real pro surfers would come occasionally. But that toe surfing, I was out there for all the sessions. I never really got too into it because I was afraid of my feet and that I would fall a lot. But it was really obvious how easy it is to do that. Like with the toe approach, you already are there if you want to be. And he did it. It was so, within like 5 minutes of toe surfing, him and Skinny and Jeff were all backdooring the bowl over and over on that big day. And the first really big towing day, there was just the 4 of us out there, and I didn't tow, so it was Jeff and those two. But you saw Pete on that. You saw him do it over and over, setting up the waves. He was trying to get deeper. He was trying to get behind it. He was pulling into the inside almost every wave, but he was getting barreled in the main peak off and on from the beginning. He was one of the people that did it. Was able to do it at both paddle and toe, and for sure the toe surfing gave him the comfort to see the difference. And also that is that spot. I mean, paddle surfing, the main bowl, is not going to help you learn how to backdoor it from the middle of the ocean, because that's a totally different place.
Yeah, it was incredible to be out there. So well, let's talk about. I want to talk about the swell. Obviously, the swells. I mean, we've got December, which was, I mean, from your point of view, is that the best paddle day that you've ever seen out there? I mean, if we, for me, I haven't seen nearly as many swells as you, but for me, when I looked at I remember the 2010 contest day, because I just busted my eardrum. I was in Hawaii and I busted my eardrum and I couldn't come over, and I was going to try and come over and, surf before the contest, as you do, and, all that stuff. But I remember watching it on the webcam and just freaking out at how big and clean and good it was. And, and then I think that, for me, up until December, that was the best big, perfect paddle day that I'd seen. And then I'll let you take it from there. But I think that December takes the cake.
It's definitely this sliding scale, because the thing about that 2010 event was by the middle of the afternoon, it was terrible. It went from, pretty epic and really good to really sketchy to nobody wants to go out after it. The contest ends and it's hideous and everybody's leaving. So that can't be the best day, because the best day has to be good straight through. There were other days where we had 2 or 3 days in a row where it was glassy straight through and 20 feet straight through, but not 25 to 30 feet. So that's the difference, is that this one had a good angle, that extra level that allowed a bunch of people to ride them from the outside, and it was clean from the day before through the day, for a week. So there was no junk in the ocean. To get it that clean with that size, that's super unusual. To have it last the whole time, I think you can't find 1 or 2 days that are even close.
Yeah. What stands out for you that day? You were. I know you were out there. It's funny. You've been out there trying to get your GoPro, your new game. Get the GoPro angles. That's Grant trying to get the adrenaline rush. Has been in the bowl, getting way.
Right. No, it's just as fun, right? In fact, that's always at the beginning. I had the cameras used to be really big and heavy, and to be in a place that you'd want to be to get the shot is super treacherous. So that's why even at Pipeline, guys are messing with it. But to get too close to that area, the place that you'd want to be, is really hard. So it's a fun game. But so December, I spent most of the time knowing the crowd's high and I'm tired. I want to be out here all day. I'll just catch a few and bring the GoPro, just stick it in my wetsuit and pull it out every once in a while and just kind of get my jollies. But Kai, I think, got 10 or 12 perfect bombs from the outside, and just, you could see he was learning it. If he could have had more days like that, and Twiggy and, a whole bunch of people just, the list just goes on and on. There were so many good rides and really high level surfing and guys pushing it, but it was just in the range where it's fairly user friendly, even though they're 50 or 60 feet tall. And then we saw what happened in the other January. The reason that's not better, if it's 50, 40-foot Hawaiian, if there's 80-foot waves come in, man, it's hard to even do anything. After that big wipeout in January, it's an hour and a half before anyone gets near one, no matter what comes, because you can't go in there. Yeah. So that December day was just in between. It was just enough size to make it off the charts huge, but not so big that it totally was eating the lineup.
Yeah. I definitely, I feel that that day was, I mean, you saw, if you were on the button, I mean, you literally could take 3 strokes and stand up and you're into a 25-foot wave. And it was, if it was whatever the direction was and everything, it was just nearly, apart from Twiggy's one in the morning where he sort of stepped over that and then crossed the bowl. Basically everyone was just sort of straight lining and then bottom turning up into the pocket and getting spat out. I mean, it was as you were saying, it seemed about as user friendly, clean as you're going to get when it's 25 feet Hawaiian, and then, January was just, I mean, it was a different universe. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just a different. I don't even know where I was in the ocean. It was just. I mean, it was just. I felt like I was sitting on Ocean Beach or something. You know, it was crazy. And then it was just a bit much bigger swell. The interval was much bigger. The ocean was just moving so much faster. It was a lot angrier. I mean, conditions were still beautiful, but just, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, I was watching some footage this morning, and I'm looking like where people were sitting. It was like 5 football fields in a circle, and there was people in and around. And then even when the two guys were towing in, the guys were towing in past guys sitting wherever they were sitting, and then they were letting go like 50 yards inside them. Then they were coming in, and then still going behind the bowl, you know. And it was just like it was just bizarre to be trying to paddle out there and really just sort of. I felt like no one really knew where we were. Would that be correct? Like that was another stratosphere level of paddling.
No one knew where to be. That's what we knew where we were. We just didn't know where to be. So
where to be, yeah.
Yeah, I could orient it after that. Like that one big set. I don't know if that was the clip you looked at, because I kind of paddled over with my GoPro just to like so I could look back at it myself. Like here, I'm way outside. That's the main peak over there. That's the 60-foot peak. These waves are bigger than that, and these guys are sitting way, way outside. So, you know, just the physics of that, and that, you know, that's back to keeping the records and stuff. You know, we don't need to tell the stories. You could see the data, you could see the photos. You know, I know where I was sitting. I know where the waves were breaking. And a couple of years ago, where we all got mauled by a really huge set, I was way off of that. You know, way off of that. And that thing was at least 60 feet that caught us.
That was the January 18th day, right? I think.
Yeah, when everyone got caught at the same time in the evening, a kind of gray day. But, you know, this was another area off. It's like in the 25 or 30 years that you're out there, you'd only seen that like once. And that was like 1 or 2 waves, not like whole sets of it. So it was pretty weird. And usually in a storm. So you knew where you were, but you know, what would happen if you went near the normal place and one of those sets comes? You're going to be swimming under 80 feet of whitewater and sucked in. So, yeah, but you know, it was super fun to see it and to feel it and to you know, I mean, I felt like a little kid. You know, like something just changed the neighborhood like you haven't been experiencing for a really long time, and it was fun. It was fun to feel it.
Yeah, I mean, I got a wave in it, and again, it's hard to even know where I was. I was definitely somewhere. I was definitely outside the main bowl. I was probably somewhere, you know, in the range of the second reef, and you know, I sort of relaxed. I'm like, oh, I've got the chip in. This is all good. And then on the second reef, it was doing what the bowl does on the inside. It was stepping out and going top to bottom, and it was like, and then I had that really horrific wipeout, and then of course Twiggy had to go and outdo me, and he went and took that same thing, like where he was into it, and then the thing scoops out and ledges out, and I think that was the huge difference was just like that. Okay, like this is doing something that we've never seen it do. Like since I've been surfing it, at least I've never seen it do that so far out to sea. Usually you're coasting in and you're like, okay, now I'm going to set myself up. Instead of now you got to react like you're on the main bowl out off the second and 2.5 third reef. You know, it was just sort of it was mind boggling.
It is, and then at the same time, and this is how it was in the old days, and I would be sitting there filming, and probably this is you have a unique perspective. You're sitting there filming on a jet ski, watching everybody tow surf it for that the first day that you tow surf. Remember that big day?
Yeah.
And I was like, get off, you're on the bad one. When you sit there and watch it over and over, you can see the ones that you could catch. You can't run over and go do it, but every once in a while you're like, ooh, look at this one. It's coming in, it's giving itself the ramp, the backwash isn't going to hit it, and if you were there, like you said, you could have even caught one of those with 3 paddles if you were right in there for the perfect chip. But if you're not there for that, and even if you are, it's going to be a hell of a ride. But if you're not there for that, you almost can't even get near one. Like there's just no way to get on one. You got to be flicked onto it perfectly. And Brock was the one who said the hand of God, or, you know, like something has to like, you know, you have to have all the willingness and commitment in the world and still get helped, or else you have no chance. But if that happens, if it comes together, it's so easy. It's fascinating how that can be, but it's positioning, it's commitment and positioning, and then a little bit of execution. But, you know, some of that stuff has nothing to do with how fast you can paddle. You can tell us. I mean, it didn't matter, man. If you're in the wrong place, it doesn't matter how you paddle all you want.
No, you could have that's the beauty. The beauty was that the December swell, you had to go deeper, right? You had it was easier to go deeper. The deeper you were, and that day was you could go deep. You would chip in, and and it was perfect. So then you knew. So throughout the day, you saw everyone, and you knew it. You had to paddle. If you wanted one of those waves, you couldn't stop paddling because there was a little current, and you had to keep paddling deeper, deeper, deeper. It was easier. You try and paddle in on the shoulder, it's not letting you in. You got a guy 20 feet deeper, 2 strokes, and he's up. Now you know that in your mind. Okay, so you come to the January day, and you know it's the same deal. It's you have to paddle deeper, but that day. And I think that everyone was too scared. It was like to really paddle that deep to the potential of, I think that was a perfect example of risk versus reward. Was the risk versus the reward really worth it that day? Because if you are trying to paddle to get one of those extra, say it's I don't know, 60, 70 foot paddle wave, you had to put yourself in so much danger that if an 80 footer come through, that you may not have come up. That may very well be the last time that anyone ever saw you. You may never have been found again. I believe, like if you got picked, because you would have had to have been so deep to pick that thing off that you would be stuck in the cove or across the cliffs. No, the skis wouldn't have found you. They couldn't have got you, and I think that. We all realized that it was this is where it stops. I don't know. Is there another swell that's in between December and January that allows you to just push it a bit more, but it's more forgiving? I don't know. Maybe
there
we'll
is.
see.
I think the period. That's it. I mean, there's definitely two things that I was thinking about. Is one, like if you're going to catch one of those waves, you have to be able to ride it. And something that we learned pretty early on, if you have a 14-foot, open ocean thing, that's not going to ride. You're not going to be able to surf it. Like you might be able to catch one of those things, but it's bad. And even like a 10-10 or 11-6, is that really what you want to try to like survive one of those waves on? They're fun to cruise on. But so for me, and one of the things I would discover on the normal days is that it's more fun on a smaller board because you can go deeper and be in that more critical spot where you don't have to worry about purling and controlling your board. And once you're on your feet, then you're surfing like a normal person. So Kai, is riding smaller boards. Some of the guys, if you catch a big wave with a little board, you're gonna have a huge advantage once you're up. And on that really big day, those big tsunami sets, those are such a different animal. There could be a day when the waves are less period and it's really tall and more consistent, and you'd be able to find those spots and not wonder, is there going to be a absolute, brontosaurus set coming after this? Because some of those sets were like maybe 100% bigger than the rest of the 60-foot waves, those really big ones. And to break down what's happening on that day, you watch the webcam, like, those are not in any way normal to the whole day. Like these big sets come from the right side of the camera and just mop up the whole thing. And they're almost not measured in the buoy report because it's like the buoy report's kind of the same all day, but that's not what came through. So if we could break down the actual data and see the actual waves, those things are real special.
Because we got to about 20 at 20 really for that swell, right? It was pretty close to a. Yeah,
but again, like 20 at 20 is an average of like, how do you get that number? And they're not all equal. So for me, anytime 20 seconds is like a high risk thing because that's how it starts to really act strangely. If you can get like 30 at 17, it'll probably be more fun and it'll probably be taller. 22 at 23 second interval, that's not a fun thing. That'll be fun to watch, but you want to catch a 14 to 17 second period wave, and those will be taller and easier to deal with, and they won't be moving that quickly.
Yeah, I always wondered, Grant, and this is, I saw it. I've seen it at a few places now where. When it gets to that 20 seconds and, over, we saw that afternoon before the January day where we went out, it was like 13 at 24, I think, in the evening. Yeah. And it's just like those things were moving through so fast, I mean, it was crazy.
I got it.
Yeah. What? Where? It's not even a wave.
Airdrop.
I wonder if I wonder if it's like a tsunami. Like I wonder like
Yeah.
that the day on the big, the January day. I wonder if it's, we always say that, you watch Making the Call with Surfline, that old movie, and you see the bathymetry, and the bigger the interval, the more it grabs the bottom and extends up and makes the wave taller. But I wonder if there comes a point where there's just so much energy moving with it that it actually doesn't grab and it doesn't, come up, and it's sort of like it just moves across the ocean. It's just too thick. And I wonder if, like you said, like a 25 at 17 is gonna feel the reef, and that with that swell height, it's gonna actually come up and give you those TP chip-ins like we sort of nearly saw on the December day, not the January day, And I was just down at Porto for the first swell, and on that same day, it was like, I'm like, wow, man, this is like sort of small for what it felt like it should be, but it was a really long period interval as well. I'm like, it feels like it's nearly just marching through like a tsunami and not actually even feeling any of the sand. It was just like going sideways, and that was it. It was just thick and fast. And
Sure.
I think back to that day and go, man, like, I wonder if the bigger, that big interval actually was nearly a detriment in a sense,
It is, and it's not just like how that one wave is acting, but that big set comes piling in, and it just like, it surges the whole coastline. It packs into that cove, it pulls water and all. And so that day in January, the current was swirling. So you have to be like fighting to get in there. And then as a set starts to come, it starts sucking you in there. Then you're running to get away from it to stay in the spot. Like if I want to be in the one spot, I'm paddling this way for a long time. Then I'm paddling this way. Then after the set comes, it moved all the water around, and it's swirling. And there's like a backwash coming out, and the next wave is coming in, and it's feeding. You know how like a river mouth will kill a peak? It's like sometimes that surge coming back out is what kills the wave. Like you think, I got it, and then it doesn't break. It's because it got a backwash. So those waves are so big, they're putting a backwash up against the Marine Reserve, into Ross's Cove, up against Kelly Avenue, and then there's like a ridge line coming back out, and it's messing everything up. So yeah, there's a whole lot of weirdness because of it. It's just overpowering the whole coast, and you can read it on instruments. You'll see the currents and the surges, everything changing, unlike a normal day, making it much harder to be in the right spot and to judge which spot's going to be the one to be in.
Where does January sort of stack up for you, as in like what you've seen out there? Has it been days as big or bigger days, or is that one of the biggest ones you've seen?
Yeah, that was the biggest clean day. And I say you can look at the big old toe surfing stuff, and that day that you were out toe surfing, and when the first day that Pete and Skin Dog were out, those are a more normal period. And look at those, like 50 at 17 on 06 was way more user friendly and way more well behaved as far as like where they're all breaking. Yeah. So that would be the way to get some paddle-ins. And then, I don't know, like when they come like that, it's just fun to see what they're going to do. And if it gets bigger, maybe it'll start to, I have seen that the one that we called the 100-foot day, the set came from the middle farther north and came across where the guys toe surf, but it came from almost a mile out, and there was a right. And by the time it came to where Mavericks was, it closed out from that Flat Rock Reserve across, and it's in the Powerlines video, but it's about 80 feet deep out there, and it peeled across clearly and then connected to Mavericks like a closeout, but it was a good quarter of a mile, half a mile past where everybody was on that day. So, but that was a single set, like 5 or 10 waves, and it was the peak of that swell. The morning was kind of small and it built, and then the afternoon was all stormy. Yeah. But Carlos won the XXL award that year for like the shoulder of one random one. It was 70 feet. Yeah. So those are, there's only a few of those days, but that's what it is. It is 70, 80, 90 feet at least on the Mavericks peak, and whatever was outside for sure is over 100.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. And,
but now who knows, foils and all that stuff. So for sure people are going to be messing with it forever. I always thought, when they get older, I'll go back to the land camera, park up there with the lawn chair, and I got it a couple 20 years till I do that, but I'm ready.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely move up.
Tell the public about the notches game that you guys would play back in the day. That I know a lot of people know about it, but for the uninitiated, you guys would try and get a notch would be a session, right?
A notch is a specific. You get 1 point. You have to go to Mavericks to the main peak and catch at least one wave that has some certain requirements. It can't just be a white cap. You can't get more than one notch on any given day. You have to get it verified by someone else, or else there'll be a court case. But the whole thing started as a game between Doc and a couple of John and Bob and I. And if you missed it, people would punish you with a sort of someone left on your doorstep a pack of nachos like turned upside down with cheese all over your step. You're like, oh shit, missed it. So he had gone through with a golf club and made notches in the fence in Pacifica Dock with his golf club. And there was like a brand new fence, and there's 4 big marks in it. And he came by and smacked his wife. John's wife's like, "Tell him to stop beating up our fence." So there's still these notches in this one fence in Pacifica. So that's why it's called the notch, from the notches in the fence. And that went from the 90s all the way through. And we had some really funny games. But in order to win it, you have to go out in all the crappy days and like terrible days when no one else. If everyone's out there, no one's really making any points because we all get away. It's the day that no one else goes, and we did there was a lot of shenanigans with that, where you plotted how to get in the way of someone or keep them on the phone so that they didn't get out there before the tide came up, and cause a traffic jam at the parking lot so they can't get out there. But it's really fun, and it is like the game of like just being there for those days. And some of the most, one of great experience for any big wave surfer, any surfer, is to go somewhere where you think it's probably not going to be any good, and you just go anyways, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, the forecast was wrong, and you're out there by yourself, and it's epic, and there's no one but you and your stupid friend that were playing this dumb game, and you think, oh my God, we would have never come except for we were trying to beat each other at this. But those are really great, and that is healthy. That it's like I don't go to the gym, I do that. Just go for a paddle. No matter what happens, you go out in the water. It's a long paddle, takes you a couple hours. Even if you have a terrible session, you come back in feeling better. And I'd rather do that than surf some crowded waves or a pool or whatever. Like someone asked me about the wave pool. I'm like, man, it's like takes about 9 out of 10 of the parts of surfing I like. Yeah. And they're not there. The ocean, the unknown, big scary stuff. It's not that fun to go to a amusement ride, but shitty Mavericks is epic.
And those notches probably were the catalyst to, for you to understand the little nuances about the wave on the swells, the negative tides, the directions, and all that sort of stuff. Because, like you said, like you've been out there when it's probably been at its very, very worst and barely surfable. And then there's probably times where you've gone out there and went, it's meant to be horrible. And you're like, oh my God, like why did we just get a really good session? I'm going to go back and check all the data and information and start to dial that in. And there's probably no one better in the world at Mavericks than you to probably know exactly when it's you. I mean, we know because when you paddle out, we're like, oh, at least we're here at the right time,
Well, it's funny though, because Greg first and then Twiggy, if they were visiting and it's like, okay, where are they? Oh, we're gonna go surf somewhere. Like, what are you guys talking about? You want to be the Mavericks champion? We're going out. Like, there's not a question. I was pretty harsh on them for sure. Like, oh well, they could go get a barrel. So I'm like, that barrels, no one cares. Yeah, we're going out here, and Twiggy for sure will credit it with his, those notch sessions. You spend 2 hours to catch one wave. You're learning so much. If you're out there a day when you're catching 20 waves, you're spending a bunch of time trying to figure out how your board turns. That's not the fight, the battle of trying to get yourself into the deep part of the peak on the right set. And for sure, those sessions are huge in learning all that stuff, and then that makes the easy, the clean days seem really easy because if there's no south wind, there's no cross swell, there's no, all that stuff. It's much easier. And without that, you never learn.
Because you can definitely see Twiggy had that in him, right? Like when he came and then he got that opportunity to surf in it for the first time, it seemed like he'd probably, done exactly what you were talking about. Like no matter what it was, he was out there and just finding his place in the lineup and just knew exactly what waves to take and, and end up winning that, the first contest when he got I think it was they voted him in or something.
Yeah, there was someone who had like 25 alternates, and I was like, put Twiggy at the end, because Billabong would give him a ticket for the year before if he was on the alternate list. Like, well, how many alternates could there be? Oh, I don't know. Like, we'll put him on. Like, so what? 27th alternate. He got a front flight out of it. But you know what? I'd surf with him in dungeons, and Dungeons is like Mavericks, especially the inside bowl. It's like a miniature step out, and there's a couple other waves like that. And his place where he learned to surf, Durban, has a real dredge to it. And there's a bunch of guys there. Rudy Palmboom Sr. from K Rock. I surf with them and go, man, guys, if these guys come to Mavericks, they will be great at it, because they're like, I mean, they have Jeffreys Bay, they have so many good spots, and they don't have, at least earlier, they didn't know about a lot of waves of Cape Town, but they hadn't had the big water experience. But the talent and the commitment to like getting into a, chopu like ledge and just stuffing it, I could see that if you took that and translated it, and I could tell when I was surfing with Twiggy in Africa, man, he's not afraid. Like, we have no idea where these sets are going to break. It's 20 feet. We've never been out to this place, and the big swing set comes, and he's in the mix, so I'm like, oh, you'll be fine at Mavericks, because at Mavericks, we do know where they're going to break. We do know that they won't swing. It'll be much easier than Dungeon. So when he first showed up, we had already kind of planned it out that, I knew it, he'll be fine. And then I was like, yeah, you're on it. We'd be out there every session. That's like, get half the trophy.
Yeah, classic. Well, I saw, let's moving on to something a little different. I saw that, you did something for the PBS channel with climate change and a buoy project. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I don't know. He was calling me. It's not a surf person, and they said, "Oh, we're going around like talking about climate change impacting people that interact with nature." So like fishermen and pilots and whatnot. It's like surfers and big wave surfers seem like a good one to go. Have you noticed anything? And we would say, okay, yeah, Mavericks, yeah, there's these 2 months different than the rest of the 30 years. So that's a different pattern. I don't know if it's related or not. But there's other things which they had a global sea energy. So the all satellite energy of the entire ocean of the Earth has like an incremental increase over a period of 20 years. Like, there's just more energy being pushed in the form of waves. Doesn't necessarily make good surf. It just means stuff's getting shaken up. And that's a trend that is not arguable. It just is. And so what's going on? How does it matter? I don't, the buoy reports have always been kind of weird. And like we were talking about the averaging of it. And I've been involved in other projects where you try to figure out what exactly is this, what are the waves that sink a ship or break the windows out of a oil rig. It's supposed to be 110 feet above sea level, and the swells are 40 feet.
Rogue waves.
What broke this window? And then what else went in there after? It's like, it wasn't just one. So these waves are not part of the sort of what's generally measured, but they are what we surf for the most part. We're looking for the biggest sets on the biggest swells. They're not really well represented by those buoy reports. And the climate change guys were just measuring that, general recognition. But the buoy data, that company that is called So Far Ocean, they make small buoys that are like the size of a lobster pot, and it has all the instruments that's in a giant NOAA buoy. So like a NOAA buoy is like a submarine or like a space capsule. It's a huge deal to put one out there. They break all the time. They can't fix them. And they're also not necessarily in the best spot for a surf. But these little So Far Ocean buoys have all that instrumentation. You can put them wherever you want. And he's got several hundred out in the ocean right now. And a couple got sucked into a typhoon by Japan. And they're the first instruments to be like in a big Category 5 storm in the middle measuring what's going on.
Oh, wow.
Like when they fly drones through or leave a camera in front of a tornado.
Yeah.
So these things are new instruments. It's new technology, and we have the availability to put in places. So we put one out in front of Maverick. So like, I want to put it right here, like go out and triangulate. And it's like, this is where I think I see them pop up. I know it's a shallow spot. It's my indicator. It's a better indicator for what happened at Mavericks than the Half Moon Bay buoy, which is all the way down the coast, 5 miles away. And then we can put a few of them out and see, okay, what's going on with the refraction? Like, what are these? And it'll give an average like a NOAA buoy, but actually will take the entire data set and give you the wave. So we could look at, say, the big day in January and go, what did that one say?
Yeah.
Not, what did the hour?
The average, yeah.
Yeah, who cares about the average, right? The average is like this big watered down number that gets diluted. We want to know what that big monster's number is. And so we're able to do some more of that stuff. And these guys are setting it up. They're hoping to have 1,000 of them out by the end of the year, I think, and then 10,000 within 5 years. And this will be like a public access network of information that everyone who does climate science and wave data, and a lot of the work is gone with shipping and how to save money on not going the wrong way around the horn. But the information without the data, no one can even judge anything. We're all just guessing, and the data is not that great. And so that's a huge part. I love being to see it and learn about it. But it's, of course, for us, it's always back to like, okay, how do I catch another one of those? Or what exactly is this? So it's fun. It's neat. And But we've all seen that, like like the Facebook, right? We couldn't even shoot HD not that long ago. Now you can live broadcast HD from Fiji with everyone's phone. Like it's just amazing. So that this data set that these buoys could have, if everybody around sprinkles them out there when a big storm comes through, we're going to have a whole new layer, and we'll learn an exponential leaps what's going on, and without it, it's just guessing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I usually finish off with 5 questions, but I'm gonna but I'm gonna switch it up this today just purely on Maverick, since though this was the theme of the podcast. So the best surfers you've seen out there, and let's start in the decade. So let's start in the 90s, from the 90s, 2000s and above. So in the 90s, who was the best surfer you've seen at Mavericks?
Jeff was one, and Richard Schmidt, that's first category. And in the early days, Sean Rhodes and Matt Ambrose. And then Santa Cruz guys, which were led by Pete and Flea, but there was a pretty good crop of them. And then Jay was in the middle, though. Like Jay was sort of a neither nor, and was one of the best there at that. So the 90s, so the 80s is Jeff and Richard dominated it and tied over. In the 90s, Pete and Flea kind of finished up the decade. And Pete's still one of them, so
that's great.
Just track his name
just
right
track
up.
Him,
just keep moving them, and who else? So Greg Long was awesome. Tazzy was awesome.
Yeah.
The international guys made an impact pretty quick. The South African network or whatever that is that got British and Twiggy, and there's been a lot of really high quality guys come in, and it was like a home and home thing.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Like the international guys, like it seems. It seems like South Africa had a pretty good, run of guys. Andrew Marr would come a bunch. Sure. Twiggy, and then even like Frank and Josh Redmond and all those guys did stints there. They've done a fair bit. I try and think back to Australia too, like who had come over. I think Ant-Man had surfed a little bit there.
Well, I don't know if he came over. I saw him. I met him in Cape Town a bunch. He would have been great if he had.
Oh yeah,
it's too far maybe.
Great, yeah. But I mean,
I can tell a Frank story. It was really funny. Frank Solomon was a kid in Cape Town. And I was like, "Where are the kids that surf this Dungeons place? Like nobody's around here." And we all had like our Red Bull stickers in our truck, and we were looking. It was kind of windy, and this kid walked over the ghetto hill and down with bare feet and paddled across the seal colony and surfed by himself. Like, who's that kid? Like, that's the kid. Like, and that was Frank Solomon. So and he was 17, I think. Wow. Another old soul. Anyway, there's been a network of those guys, and they definitely help fresh energy at the spot, and yourself, of course.
Yeah, and then and you still got now you got Matt Bromley from South Africa as well, and there's a bunch of great guys.
Have you seen Steve?
Have you seen Steve?
A lot of good waves. Yep.
Yeah. Let's.
But what's cool though? There's those younger guys that are locals are good. Lucas done great. Hunter, Jason. For a long time there was not, or Ion should fit in that category of a guy who grew up there and surfed it like with as big a as anybody, and without his surfboards, his boards were never the best, but the guy was tough. And those younger guys now are surfing it really well. Amazing that a small pond like Half Moon Bay could put out surfers that could compete with Brazil and Australia. That's pretty intense. So
I tell people, I go, if you're looking at somewhere that's really like raising the bar for like a young kids, it's like it's crazy because it's that community of Luca, Thomas Longard, and his brother Peter, and you got Hunter, and there's a bunch of them, and they're all pushing each other, they're feeding off each other. Now they throw John Mel into the mix from Santa Cruz, and Willem Banks, he had a freaking insane waves that day, and Aloe Seabar, there's just and they're all now they're doing the left. All the goofy footers are backdooring the left, and
that's good though, because then I can still catch some on the other side because they all want that. It's much better for me.
It's such an exciting time to be surfing at Mavs. It's I guess the question I was going to ask was like, after what we saw this year, the question is what's next. Is it left? Is it a backdooring a 20-foot left and getting spat out, or is it just getting an opportunity like we did this year, like multiple days in a season where we get comfortable enough to just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it? Because I mean, what Pete did, it's going to be hard to beat that, but that's not going to happen. So you're still going to be chasing that unicorn. Yeah. So I always wonder, like, what is next for Mavericks in the performance?
I think there's two separate things. Like, what's going to happen on the 30-foot plus days, and then what's going to happen the rest of the time. So
yeah,
and you could see it, and I always wondered why it's taken so long. The progression of the surfing in the 12 to 20 foot range has been kind of slow compared to the 8 feet and under. When you and I were little kids, pretty much no one was bumping out of the wave, and now everyone's, if they don't do a flip, it's nothing. Big wave surfing kind of atrophied in the guns, and everybody over gunning to try to handle what would be the big set of the day, and they're surfing on a big junky old board that they can't do anything on a normal wave. So I think the progression on a normal Maverick swell would be that the best surfers are going to ride smaller boards. They're going to surf it so much better than what we've been seeing, that we shouldn't be mistaking the 50s for the 70s for the 90s for the now. Like, the now should be blatantly like, whoa, this guy's going really fast. Yeah. He's got total control. He's able to transition. He's able to do tricks. He's able to make sections that no one can imagine. And that's so true in 6 to 8 feet, right? It's like, I'm constantly baffled by what guys are pulling off and women in the smaller surf, but it's not happening in the big waves yet. And I think that will happen. So the big days make everybody realize we don't need a 10-6 to catch a 20-footer. Yeah. We can catch a 30-footer with it, so smaller one. So sort of
what Albion that have done at Jaws, being on the West Bowl, because I had a question the other day, and I was talking to Tony Moniz on the podcast, and I said, if I look back at the 1990 Eddie when they were, Brock got his giant one, and then I look at footage today at Waimea, I'm like, what's different? Like, really, Jaws is a different animal because we haven't seen it all the way back then, and that's come up, but Mavericks has been there a long time as well, and I think we're starting to see it with the left, and the shorter boards on the outside ledges and stuff, and some top turns and that. So I think you're right. I think that what you realize is you could have probably got the waves that Kai were getting on an 8-6 out there. Realistically, like if you're in the right spot, that thing lifts you up and you're in. You know what I mean? Like,
and those are 25 footers.
Yeah,
those
on
are
an
25
8-6.
foot waves.
Yeah,
right. So Mavericks is great for that, and that's the tragedy of everybody coming out with really big boards is they're wasting a good part of it, especially if they drop in and kick out, because the inside and the middle of the wave can be really what separates it from the rest of the surfing world. And when you start catching them on smaller boards, it is so much fun. So I used to ride a 9.0 or an 8.6, and I would want it on a small day, and sometimes it would be bigger than I meant, and I think, oh shit, I blew it, but then you get on one, and it's so much more fun. And that's why I ended up riding 9.2 for almost all the Mavericks contests. I rode a 9.8 in the 2010 one, but I have 10.6s, 10.8s, 11 footers that I've had since the 90s. I would never consider those boards for anything, even on a big day, because I don't want to be on a wave on a big day. So, but I have ridden a 6.8, 7.10, on normal Mavericks days, and my God, I remember those sessions. They're so much fun. And for the kids that are such good surfers, that's where the progress is going to be. And I think that, the events or the incentives should be progression. Like no one wants to see you catch 25 waves on your 10-footer. Just nobody cares, but do it on a 7.6 and see what happens. That'll be so fun to watch. And, that's why. So I love to see that. And it's so much fun to see progression, to feel it, the speed, I think the designs are getting better. I see it, there's a lot of weird ideas out there, and there's more interesting approaches and more people putting energy toward that than before. And in the old Mavericks days, guys are glassing on single fins and pulling hard bottom turns, and we kind of got away from it with the wide and the slide. And, there's some other parts that you can bring back that are actually, progress. I have pictures of Richard Schmidt and Pico Alto in the 80s on one of those chunky boards that they used to have, like I don't know what, and he's ripping it, just demolishing it. And and like guys, you look at old Sunset, right? How they surf Sunset in the 80s, they're killing it. And it didn't translate to Mavericks very well somehow, and it should.
What do you think the best fin setup for Mavericks is?
I'm riding single now, but I'm old, so it'll be interesting to see what the guy. I'm not going to tell anybody what's best. I think that we haven't found it yet. There's definitely no consensus. You got 3, 4, 2, 1. Yeah. People are trying 5, I'm sure, and it's going to be a bunch of different things. I mean, Kai has been messing with a lot of interesting stuff. Andrini, the board I'm riding, is an edge technology all the way up into the front, and I can feel it in all my hundreds of boards I've ridden out there. That thing lifts up, and it creates a plane with that Greenow edge. It releases above the front part of the board, and it just goes so fast. And if you take that speed from the bowl, and if you can translate it, you know, people should be doing stuff that we can't even recognize pretty quickly. So I imagine that's happening. I've been waiting for it, but too old to help. It's super exciting, man. I can't wait. We were thinking, remember the Malloy guys made that little board and they made a movie just about everybody trying to ride it. Dan took it to my man. Yeah. I want to do that. I'm like, we're going to make one of these. And then no one wants to paddle out on it because it's like scary. But if there's one in the boat, and there's $20 that goes to whoever gets the best wave with it, right? We could have a lot of fun with that. So, and like we talked about, like bringing out an old one and watching that old Makaha board or something, and everybody have a go at that. Like I could have so much fun playing those games, and you know, there's just the sky's the limit to what would be exciting and fun and innovative, and you know, I'm never bored of it. And this year I learned so much. And we talk about the expert on that. I feel like a novice. I mean, we learned so much this year. Like recognizing things, the patterns that you never even thought of before. You know, that whole backwashing out the rip thing. Like once I started seeing it and feeling it, it's so obvious. And other times it felt the current move when the set comes that moved us. And you're like, okay, what's happened? Is the wind switching? No, the current, the swell, the set changed the current for like 20 minutes. Yeah. And then it switches back. I mean, so we're learning, and it's so much fun. So, and it's been fun having you come.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope to go and just pick off a few waves here and there and be a part of it. And, you know, I just love the whole community. I love when we're all able to go to the, you know, OPL, everyone has a beer and, you know, the food and talk story and the stoke is real, you know, and I feel like that's, you know, more just as much as the Mavericks, the wave, it's the community and everyone around there that makes everyone feel so welcome. So, yeah, man, I can't wait to get back already. You know, summer can move
June.
on and we can. I know it's like, damn it.
This is why I got to go find somewhere else to visit, because as I go to New Jersey and then it like makes Ocean Beach in the summer feel like big waves again, because a little recalibrate in the knee slappers, but. Yeah, man, it's part of it's fun is looking forward to it and like regrouping. If it was big all the time, it wouldn't be special and we would never get anything done. So it's helpful to have a break. And yeah, man, I've got another 20 years of trying to do it from the water, and then I'll watch from the side. But I can't imagine ever getting over it. I know you won't. So
never. Well, Washi, thanks so much for your time, mate, and thanks for everything you do, and appreciate you. And we'll see you in the bowl very soon.
Yeah, somewhere, somehow. Thanks, man. And keep up the good work. It's fun, man. I love watching these. It's great to pass the stoke around and hear from everybody. And it is a tight group, and for me it's been so special to have that international posse and that we all share these neat times. And when you get to go to South Africa or Peru or somewhere and meet some of them, you're like,
yeah, it's the best.
Only see you twice a year, but it's always fun.
All right, buddy.
All right, go well.